Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
Welcome back, and we're now moving into our first segment for the morning and getting some updates on union matters from BNTU. In with us, well, not in with us, but on Skype, we've got the president of the BNTU, Elena Smith, or Senator Elena Smith. Senator, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
I'll tell you what, you're looking lovely there. I love your backdrop that much. We could tell you. And we know for a fact that at this particular time it's very hard, and it's for the entire country. We heard from the Minister of Education, Youth and Sports, and we got that update, and it was a good sit down. People were able to ask questions. So let's get your side on this. And firstly, union matters. What's going on with the union and how they feel on the approach and moving forward?
Well, it's a trying time for us. Trying time in that our teachers are out, and a lot of them would have preferred to be in the classroom right now, working with their students. But God speaks, and so there's nothing that we can do.
Yeah.
Other than that, we, as you are aware, we have been in discussions with the financial secretary and his team to discuss the matter of this increment freeze, or the foregoing of the increment, as they are calling it. And so those negotiations continue. We await feedback from them because we had made some counter proposals to what they presented to us. And we await hearing from them as to what it is that they would be accepting from us and how we proceed forward.
So there are multiple layers here. There's first dealing directly with the education sector and what happens with the rest of the school year. The union was consulted before the plan was presented by the Ministry of Education. Am I right?
We had a meeting with CEO and Dr. Bob just a week before, and they wanted to share with us, what are some of their thoughts and plans that they had. We did not get to the point where there was agreement on the way forward because it was just an initial discussion. We would have had a meeting yesterday, and we would have discussed those further. So some of the matters that the minister spoke about, we were aware of, but we were not aware that the decisions had already been made.
Okay. But what is the reaction from the union based on what was presented?
Well, fortunately, Marlene, when we had the meeting the week prior, right after that meeting, we had sent out some information to our teachers, and we were asking them, just some what-if questions, what if the school year ends, or what if we're out at the end of the school year, what would happen, when do we begin, how do you feel about starting a new school year, maybe August, September, so we were putting out those sorts of questions to them, trying to get some feedback from them. So when the announcement came from the minister, we had already gotten some feedback from our teachers regarding some of those issues. I can tell you the matter of promotion, for example, a lot of teachers are not happy with that one because they feel that that they as teachers and the principals of their school or the vice principals should be able to look at the students individually, look at how they have been doing, and then determine whether these students are promoted or not based on the performance that they had over the past term and a half or almost 2 terms. So there are some who are not satisfied or who are not happy with that decision. Nonetheless, the ministry has made it clear to us yesterday that that decision is final. And so there's no changing or no other matter to that matter of promotion, especially for students from infant 1 to standard 5 and then 1st to 3rd form. Standard 6 and 4th form students, the schools would then have a little bit more say in whether those students graduate or not, depending on what the school expects of these students before they graduate. So that is an issue that they are battling with right now as teachers.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said it very clearly, and in fact, we had asked Dr. Bob when we spoke to her that has already, for primary school specifically, that is what the Ministry of Education is instructing that should be done. They said they'll consult with managing authorities for secondary. Were there any other issues that the teachers flagged from the recommendations that you presented to them?
Well, they were concerned with matters such as long leave, maternity leaves, teachers who would be going on study leave. Because what happened for there are teachers who go on long leave in April, starting April 1st, and then there are others who go in September. It's just those 2 periods.
Yeah.
So persons would have already had approval for their long leave before we went into the state of emergency. So they knew that they would have been on long leave April 1st.
Okay.
But because of the situation, a lot of times teachers, when they get a long leave, they take the time to go a little vacation.
Yeah.
So some were saying, well, listen, we are locked up in the house. This is no long, this is no vacation. So would we be able to defer that long leave? And so the ministry is saying that no, once the leave has been approved, they must proceed on the leave. So those persons who have already gotten approval for April and September, they will have to proceed with their leave when the time comes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there will be no change to that. The matter of study leave is another issue. For the simple fact that some schools may have to extend the term that the teacher would be studying because of this pause here. Not many of them, because several of them are saying that while we are out, they are continuing to provide sessions for the teachers, the student teachers, and so they would be able to meet the goal and the teachers would be able to move on. So the ministry is of the belief that there's not really a need, or there will not be a need or much need to extend study leave, because the teachers will be able to complete their studies within the prescribed time.
So with these concerns that you do have, as you clearly said, the ministry has already presented their position on these matters. What do you do as a union? Do you simply, do you inform them that there's specific cases where people have concerns and see if there's an amicable agreement that can be worked towards?
Well, that's what we did yesterday when we met. We raised these concerns at the teachers because we've asked them, you've now seen the press briefing from the minister. Send us your questions, your concerns, because we'll be meeting with the ministry. And so when we met yesterday, we raised those concerns. Several of them were answered. And there are some of them who, for example, what will happen to CPDs for this summer, because teachers normally do that in the month of August.
Yeah.
So what if we cannot return to school before the end of this school year, and there's a decision or there's a request to begin the school year earlier than normal for the next school year? That it would mean then that we would not be able to have our August sessions.
Yeah.
So teachers were concerned as to how would that affect their ability to gain the 120 CPD hours to maintain the license.
Yeah.
So that is a matter that the task force, if you would recall, BNTU had some issues with that, and so there was a task force formed to look at that and to see whether the 120 hours being requested is if those hours are realistic. So that task force will now be going over that and will be determining whether there is going to be some sort of waiver, or whether they are going to find other ways and means of providing CPD sessions that teachers would be able to accumulate those hours. So that one is not finalized as yet.
They have, though, provided some online courses that would be accredited for CPD hours, right?
Right. There are some, well, yesterday when we spoke, we know that there are some that have been uploaded to their website, but there are others that are still not up as yet. And so those will be put up, I believe they said next week.
Okay.
And then teachers can access those and then get hours for those. And if teachers on their own can find other online sources, what they can do is to send that to TED, to Ms. Jeannie Garbott Franklin, and they would then determine whether those would be approved or not for the hours. So teachers can use this time to do some CPD, and those would be counted as well. We are aware too that we have teachers in the rural areas, for example, those faraway villages who don't have access to internet.
Yeah.
And so even if they would want, they would not be able to access any online material at this time. So those teachers then would have to be considered because of their situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now,
So we can't be penalizing them, for not being able to do things when they don't have the resources to do so.
Yeah.
so that matter is still under discussion, that you don't want kind of a generalization of how teachers would be able to access CPD hours online, given the fact that some people simply may not have access.
Correct. So we continue to have that discussion, and the task force will continue to deal with that. And then as soon as we have those finalized, then we can inform our teachers as to what the decision is.
You did mention that one of the concerns from the teachers union is that they're not too happy with, in terms of rolling over students from the class that they're in now into another level. Are there anything else that you would say would be pressing for them moving forward in terms of a concern?
One of the other huge concern is the matter of contracts, because you know that teachers do sign contracts.
Yeah.
And we do have some teachers who this year would have been their probation year, or the probationary year, and so it would have meant that at the end of this school year, then they, depending on whether they had done their entire school year in a manner that they would have passed and would be recommended for full employment, they were wondering how things like this would affect them being able to to get a full-time post or to be hired permanently, having passed their probationary year.
Yeah.
Because, well, it's an entire term out. So those are some of the questions that teachers are concerned about, the ability to be able to sign contracts, because if we're out and we can't be moving around, then they can't sign contract.
Yeah.
And your contract comes with your employment. So these are legitimate concerns that they have, and hopefully we would be able to have some sort of movement before the new school year begins, that teachers would be able then to make their submissions for license application or for license upgrade, get into office to sign their contracts, so that these things could be dealt with before the school year begins, because these now become additional stress on the teachers now, because we're out. I can't get to a JP to sign my documents for me. So all of these little stress that comes with having to do their submissions just adds to what really and truly we are going through right now.
It's a lot of little details. What I'm hearing from you is a lot of little details that you're trying to ensure won't become a hindrance when the time comes around for us to return to some state of normalcy.
Yes, correct. And Marlene, when we spoke to CEO and Dr. Bob with regards to the submissions that teachers have to make, some of these documents that they submit must be signed by a JP. They have to be authenticated.
Yeah.
So what the ministry is saying right now, that for now, they would be waiving those requests. So, for example, if you have to send your transcript and you can't get access because the schools are closed, you have to have a JP stamp and sign your document, and you can't because you can't be going out. The ministry will be waiving those for now, so that the teachers would then be submitting whatever they have. They would submit now electronically to the district education centers, and they would be reviewing, and the teachers would be given an electronic copy of a license for now. Yeah. As soon as we are out of this emergency and they are able to move around and get those documents, then the teacher would then have to do a resubmission of those documents the proper way. Okay. So have them authenticated, have your transcript if necessary, your copies of your diploma certificates, and then send that, submit that package, and then the teacher would then be given a hard copy of the license.
Okay.
So initially they would submit what they have.
Yeah.
The way they can. It would be reviewed and approved if they meet the requirements, and then they would be given electronic copy. And as time progresses, they would have to then resubmit, and then they would be given the hard copy of their license.
It's good to hear that there are temporary solutions being worked out, because this is an unprecedented time, and whatever solution is made at this point, it would be the first time that we'd be facing these circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I wanted to ask in looking at the teachers and how they're responding to what's being requested of them for the final leg of the school year. While we know the state of emergency goes to the end of the month. We don't know if it'll be extended. We don't know definitively what will happen in May or June. But what we know the Ministry of Education is asking is for teachers to offer support to parents who are working with their children at home, to identify remedial areas, in other words, where the children may be falling behind a bit, and focus exclusively on those areas, and also just kind of simplify the lessons to things like science and math, literacy, and I think it's reading too, right? So what's been the response from the teachers for this specific request? They're not looking at curriculum-based teaching as we would typically see in a classroom.
Correct. And I think that might be a misconception by some parents, because I think some parents probably have the idea that because the ministry is saying that teachers must give work, that they expect that the teachers would be doing some of the same things that they were doing well in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so we know that is not possible. Yeah. But let me first say thank you to our teachers. We have many of our teachers who have been going above and beyond the call of duty during this difficult time, ensuring that their students got their packages, checking in on them to see whether they're completing those. Yeah. Children are able to text with them back and forth, to ask questions. And so we really need to thank our teachers for the wonderful work that they have been doing throughout the past 2 weeks. Yeah. This week, again, we are back at it. And as you are aware, the ministry is now working on packages to send to these students, yeah, as well as some material for radio and for TV that can be aired, that the students would be, those who don't have access to internet, would be able to listen to this on the radio and participate in mini lessons, if you will, throughout the course of the day, or at least a block of time per day for the entire week, yeah, so that they can be engaged in something, that they would be learning from. So we have a lot of teachers who are helping the ministry putting together these packages. And so, we want to applaud those teachers who volunteered. And I want to emphasize that, they volunteered, because I know that some teachers are wondering, well, will I be paid for the work that I'm doing? No, because in the circumstances, there's not much money to go around, so you will not be paid, hence you were asked to volunteer. So teachers have really been going out of their way.
Yeah, yeah.
In everything, in every other profession, Marlene, that there will be those who, for whatever reason, might not be doing as good as they could do. Yeah. And so we just ask those teachers who have had some difficulty to spend some time and to try to find some time to reach out to their students. I want to particularly mention those teachers who are replacing other teachers. Yes. Because those who are on long leave, they don't have a replacement. And so if you were in school, that teacher would have been in the classroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the teacher not being in the classroom when they should have been on April 1st or the Monday in April, mm-hmm, that teacher doesn't have access to her class list, parents' information, that sort of thing, that teacher can reach out to those students and those parents, because the teacher had not gotten the time to be in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So mostly the teacher would have been at the school to touch base with the teacher to see where you were and where should I start from when I take over. Yeah. So those teachers who are replacing another teacher who is on long leave or whatever kind of leave, I'm asking that those teachers, if they have not yet done so, if they would reach out to their principals or their managements to say or to ask whatever questions they have, because the ministry has said, and which we don't agree with, the ministry has said that the teachers who are replacing another teacher, that the management must inform the ministry whether these teachers have been employed. Okay. So despite the fact that they were approved the position, some of them maybe are not doing anything during this period, and if they are not doing anything, if they have not reached out to their principal or their management, then that would be deemed as if though they are not working or they're not employed.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I want to ask
was that
teachers,
communicated beforehand though? Because that's, actually, I did want to just say that when we were talking about unemployment, we had that specific question for teachers who were already contracted to take over in April, but with the state of emergency, wasn't able to do so. And so it was a question that we got here, whether or not that would classify as unemployment. But what you're saying is that with the recent notification from the Ministry of Education that the long leaves that that was supposed to start in April would in fact be in effect, that would mean that the teachers that were hired as substitutes are actually on the job. But has anyone told them that they have to contact their management authority or what should have been done in the meantime?
Right, because normally that wouldn't happen. The teacher would have been in the classroom.
Yeah, yeah.
So because now they are sending work to their students, these teachers would not have had access to the information from the students. So I, as a regular classroom teacher, would know my student, my parents' contact information. I know where they live, so I can contact them.
Yeah.
But the new teacher would not have gotten those things until she would have entered the classroom.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, they had met before, so they know what they should be doing. So it's just for them now to at least contact their principals, or for those principals to contact those teachers.
Yeah.
And to find a way to share with them, some of the students' contact information, or something that these teachers can reach out to these parents, or these parents can reach out to this teacher who is holding over.
Yeah. Okay.
In addition to that, Marlene, I think you've heard about some schools who are demanding so much of teachers. For example, we know of some high schools who are saying to teachers that you must continue to do online classes, for every 40-minute period, just as a regular school day. You must give tests, quizzes, and they have even gone to the point to say to teachers, listen, whatever you are doing right now will count for 20% of the student's grade.
Wow.
And we're also hearing that primary school, and I understand that there's a school here in Belize City, an Anglican school here in Belize City, who has informed the teachers that they must report to school to get the report cards from the office, so that they can go home and prepare report cards to distribute to parents.
But how is that possible?
The ministry has already said that we must keep our students engaged, but it's not to the point where as if though we are in school.
Okay.
You can't be giving them tests and quizzes and projects and be grading these things, because not all the students have access to these things.
Yeah.
And not all parents are home to work with them.
With their child, yeah.
Right, and not only that, if you give a child a project and a parent doesn't have the materials at home, how will they get it for the child to complete the project, and then you are grading them?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's to keep them engaged, so that they continue to do some work. They're not just staying home doing nothing, but it's not to have them as if though they're in a regular classroom and then testing and quizzing and saying to the teachers, stressing out these teachers that they must do all of these things, when we all know that all of these teachers who are doing these things are doing so out of their own pocket, because they are not being given any data to do this. They are using their own data, their own internet from home. So it is at the expense of the teacher, as usual, that they use their own resources to provide for their students.
Okay, but what is your recommendation? Because that's mixed messages there. Yesterday, when we interviewed this chief education officer, she clearly said that tests and quizzes and exams were not going to be administered during this time. And she was very specific in talking of kind of engaging kids in their weak areas and strengthening the areas that we know we have to focus on, literacy and science and math. And they also had spoken of doing electronic report cards as a possibility as well. I know I've read that. So when your principal or your school tells you you must, and then the ministry is saying, no, you shouldn't, who should the teacher listen to?
And that is precisely the issue that teachers are having, because the ministry is giving this information, and then the school, the principal sometimes are contradicting what the ministry is saying.
Yeah.
And so we say to our teachers, you must go by what the ministry is saying.
Okay, does this matter? We're not talking about a private institution though, right?
No.
Because they can do it. Yeah.
Right, no, we are talking about the regular public schools, those are what we are talking about.
Okay.
And teachers teachers keep reaching out to us, with those concerns. So we are saying to them, go by what the ministry is saying. The ministry is saying that the students must be engaged, but it is not as if though you're having regular classes.
Okay.
So this is no time to be giving tests and quizzes and projects and to say coming to school. Teaching is not an essential service, so there's no reason for teachers to be going to school right now.
Okay.
So I hope that principal who is requesting teachers to go to school for report card, would reconsider that position in light of what the ministry is saying.
Yeah.
There is, Marlene, a hotline. I think you're aware of that,
Yes.
that teachers and parents can call if they have any issues. And if I may, those numbers, 615-759 7402.
All right.
Any teacher or parent or student can call that number to share concerns with the ministry.
Can you repeat that number again, please?
615-7597 and 615-7402.
Okay.
Okay. So parents and teachers can call the ministry directly if they're having any concerns with what is taking place with their child's school.
That is correct.
You said it very early on, Senator, and I think it's worthwhile acknowledging. Sometimes the pressure comes from the parents. Sometimes the parents feel that the children should be getting more work and that they should be engaged the entire time. And I know that Dr. Bob was very clear yesterday, and we do appreciate it, to acknowledge that what one family may have access to in terms of time and resources in one area is not the same across the board. So this is kind of the best case solution that will be good for everyone.
Right.
What's your message to parents?
I would like for parents to just understand that this time that we are going through, yes, it's a difficult one, and parents have their own worries and frustrations right now. But I want them to understand that the work that is being given to their children is just to keep them occupied and to keep their minds engaged so that these students don't return to work forgetting everything that they've learned. So it's a way to occupy their minds, it's a way to be doing some reviewing, it's a way to have them engaged. So don't expect that your child should be doing work from 8 in the morning to 3 in the evening just as a regular school day. The child needs breaks in between. When the child is at school, the child gets breaks.
Yeah.
Even during our lesson, it's not that the teacher is just teaching, talking the whole lesson. In between the lesson, there are activities. The children get to get up and move around and do activities, and so the students are engaged. So take some time, spend some time each day with your child, even if it's just half an hour. Spend some time with your child reading a book, going over times table, going over the sight words, something educational. If you are cooking, talk to the child about what you are using, food groups that those things belong to, the health aspects of what it is that you are cooking. Every little thing that you do can become a lesson that the child can learn from. So engage your students as best as possible. Don't have them all day, all night. I for the first week of school, I had my son up until sometimes after 8, 9, 10 at night, having been on the computer all day. He's still on the computer again at night to finish his assignments and work to submit. Yeah. That's really not good for a child. So parents, please spend some time involving your student in some sort of educational activity. It doesn't have to always be writing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that one of the key messages we must keep on saying is that this is just not normal circumstances. This isn't a flood day or a holiday. There's a lot of emotional stress that people are experiencing, from kids to adults and the wider society.
Yeah.
Precisely so. And so for that, and that is why we cannot be pressuring parents right now, with projects and these other things, and even the students, because a lot of these students, they feel off of their parents. So if I am frustrated and I am worried and I am saying all of these things, my child gets the same way and my child begins to react the same way.
Of course.
So then a child can't function if the child is in that worrisome mood.
Yeah.
So, we want to be as calm as we could under the circumstances. We understand that all of us are suffering right now in varying degrees.
Yeah.
We have worries to bear, but spend some time with your child and see how best you can help them so that they don't forget and they're
Definitely.
engaged.
You know, and I just like to add to that as well, and especially for parents, myself being one. One of the things about a child being at home, even though reading a book, yes, it's essential for breaks, but at the same time, they would like to speak to their peers as well, because you know, it is that social build-up that they get when they're in the school place. So when they're in the school, so I'd like to appeal as well to parents that if their child would like to talk to a friend or one of their friends, it's always good to reach out to them so they could feel better. They could have conversation and they could feel that calmness.
And that is so true, because there are things that they might share with their friends that they won't share with you, the parents.
Yes.
You know, so they need that outlet that they are able to vent, you know, and to hear from other people how their peers are feeling or what they are thinking. So that is very important indeed.
Senator, let's move on to the other issue, because that's another big one as well, and that's the financial aspect. So the minister said in this press conference on Monday that basically that teachers will get paid, but of course this is something that is going to be reviewed. Talk to me about where we are in terms of the status of things like your increments, and also looking at just ensuring that teachers are able to just receive their basic salary.
In terms of the proposal that came from the government for the foregoing of the increment, as I shared earlier, there are some teachers who don't mind because they understand the situation that we are in. All of them do, but some are readily willing to say yes. But there are others who have concerns and have conditions. And so we've shared those conditions with the team that the FinSec had when they met with the 3 unions. Things, for example, such as, you know, the ministers giving up a portion of their earnings as well. You know, the matter of government vehicles just running all over the place, being parked, it's on, AC burning and nobody in the vehicle. The matter of some of these persons who drive government vehicles who are able to go to the gas station, you know, send their cousin, their sister, their brother, their mother to fill up gas at our expense. Maintenance costs that the government pays for these vehicles, you know, so all of these concerns. And one of the huge concerns that they also had was the fact that, listen, some of us are owed increments from 2-3 years ago. So how do you come and ask me to forego this increment that I've already worked for? Because the increment would be the one from last year that you have already worked for. When you have 2-3 years of increments outstanding for me, so they are saying, listen, pay me what you owe me, and then I consider giving up an increment. So the unions have made counter proposals because we are not in agreement with just simply foregoing. We are saying that things are not good right now. Yes, we understand that. But if it is that we have to forego, then when the economy gets better, then there must be a way in which you can compensate us for you know, what we are giving up now. We are not saying that give it up to us now, but we are saying if we give up something now, 2-3 years, 5 years down the road, you should be able to at least give us back something, you know, for giving up. If that would be the decision. So that has not been finalized as yet. As I said, we are awaiting the feedback from them. But teachers are concerned, and especially about salaries going forward, because the FinSec and the Prime Minister has alluded to the fact that, you know, essentially we are broke.
Well, there's no income. There's no money being and that's why I was asking, because I know what the minister responded in terms of my interpretation was basically just saying, for now, we know that you'll get paid, but long term, we just don't know what's going to happen. So has there been a discussion as to perhaps, you know, sometimes you plan and say, okay, well, this is where we may potentially have to cut. The increments and the wage freeze is one example, and no new hiring or no new study leaves. But moving forward, I mean, how secure do you feel at this time that your teachers will maintain their salaries?
Not very secure, Marlene. Again, we know the circumstances, and even though they have assured us as best as they can that their employees, that they will do all in their power to ensure that we are paid, we really and truly don't know what lies down the road.
Yeah.
So we may be able to say for now, well, yeah, okay, yes, April salary is safe and May is safe and maybe June is safe. We don't even know that. So we have to continue this discussion because we are not at the point where we know for sure, but we are preparing. And so as a union, we are looking at possible scenarios that could happen and what would be our response should those scenarios come into play.
Okay.
Now,
So there's no discussion with us as yet to that end, but we are preparing ourselves in the event that 3 months, 4, 5, 6 months down the road, something happens.
Now, Senator, and we keep on saying this, these are unprecedented times, and without a doubt, there are people watching who are saying, listen, over 70,000 people have applied for unemployment benefits because they're receiving nothing. Many people are receiving major cuts in their salaries. And so they may look at what the union is saying right now and say that it's simply unfair that you are unwilling to sacrifice any portion of your salary during this time while everyone else is taking a cut.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
But it's not a matter that we are unwilling. We are saying to the government, or we are saying to the team that came to us, that listen, we understand the situation, we understand the circumstances, we are willing to work with you. You have to work with us as well, because we are fully cognizant that, as everybody have been saying, Marlene, that when there was a time of plenty, we didn't do what we needed to do to ensure that when a day like this comes, we would have been prepared for it. And so we have seen our teachers, the first thing our teachers say to us, listen, you want to take away from us when you mismanage our funds and you, in a way, you have us where we are, because COVID-19 recently came. And it's like, just as soon as that came, we can't afford it. We knew that there were issues before then. We've been hearing that, that there were issues with regards to meeting salaries, but it wasn't confirmed. And so we had no confirmation. So it's not just that this pandemic now has put us in this position. This has added to it and has probably put us in that position faster than we would have been. But we knew that things were not all that good. So we are not saying that we will not do our part, or we are not considered doing our part. We are saying to them, listen, all of us must do our part. You can't be taking away from us who have to spend so much of what we earn in carrying out our responsibilities as a teacher, but yet you have other persons who are making so much more. We have persons in the public service who get an allowance of over $1,500 per month, which is a teacher's pay or a junior public officer salary for the month, and you are getting that as an allowance. We have our ministers who are not paying tax on certain things. I mean, that is not fair either, because I am paying 25% of my monies in tax when other persons are paying 6 and 8%. So we have to look at the entire picture and see how fair it would be to tell me to give up $100 when I only have $150, and to tell you to give up $100 when you have $600. That is not equal.
I think that's a very valid point there. Out of curiosity, so since you presented what are some of the most obvious forms of wastage that takes place within government departments, what was the response? Because you are right, everyone's being asked to tighten their belt, and are we seeing enough cost-saving measures coming from their end?
And that is an issue that we raised as well. There was this cost-saving committee that was put forth, and the committees have more than once presented to the government proposals for cost-saving measures. And we keep saying to them, listen, you have this committee formed, and this committee is tasked with doing this so that you can be assisted in being able to save monies. But it seems as if though the committee meets and the committee presents its recommendations, and then those are just tabled and they are left there. Now we're at a point now where we now have to now seriously consider those recommendations, because there's nothing else that we can do at this point. There must be cuts in several areas. we are understanding that even while we are going through this situation, that there is still the move to hire persons on contract. Why would you be hiring persons on contract right now who you have to give them this huge package?
Yeah.
When other persons within the public service can just take on those responsibilities, move somebody up or give them that position.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So if you are asking me to make a sacrifice, then you must also show me that you are sacrificing too.
Yeah. It's only fair.
And that is the issue that our teachers are having. Yeah. The issue is not really making the sacrifice. The issue is, why must I be sacrificing when you are just being wasteful and you are not doing your part?
That we all do our part, yeah. And just to be clear, you said that this was a meeting between all unions and or Public Service Union and BNTU along with the FinSec. So it wasn't just the teachers, it was also PSU.
PSU, BNTU, and the APSSM, along with FinSec and Dr. Allen and a few other persons, the government team, along with the 3 unions together.
Now, just to clarify, because you also spoke of the issue of increments that may not have been received before and those that teachers may have been, would have received. Are you looking for some sort of timeline or definitive commitment as to when these types of payments would eventually come into effect? We saw that when there was a conversation with the adjustment, that once we saw certain profit margins, then you would expect that these adjustments would be made. Are you looking at something along those lines?
Well, in terms of those teachers who are owed increments, those are things that have already been approved, and for whatever reason, every time the teacher goes to the commission, they will tell you it has been approved, it has been sent to the management. You go to the management, we've already sent it to the finance department. And so there's a hold up somewhere. So these teachers have been waiting, as I said, 2, 3, 4 years, some of them, for an increment that has already been approved for a year or more. And what is left is for them to get the physical money into their account, and that has not happened. So that portion of it, the teachers expect to get those owed increment before the end of the school year, because those, as I said, those are owed. In terms of the increment that they're asking us to forgo, the one that we worked for the last school year, we are saying to them, or we are proposing that instead of foregoing that increment, that it is just deferred, and anywhere between 3 to 5 years from now, when it is that the economy comes back a bit, then the government can then look at making up during that time. So we are not saying that, okay, we will give up, but you must give it up within a year or so. No, because we understand the situation.
Yeah,
and you also don't want to leave it with indefinite terms either.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So just finally, message to your teachers right now who are at home, trying to maneuver their way through this temporary normal that we have. Just the union representation and your expectations of them as well.
Well, I just want to say to our members that despite the fact that we're on lockdown, your union continues to work. We continue to try to get all the answers that our members have questions, and we want to get the answers to those questions and those concerns. So we continue to work to get those. We continue to work with the ministry. We'll be having weekly meetings with them as much as possible to get updates, because we also have questions and concerns regarding what will happen when we do reopen. What will that process be like? How will that work? How will these huge class sizes that we have right now work if it is that we have to continue some form of social distancing?
Yeah.
How will our children be protected? How will our teachers be protected? The students who have to be traveling on buses, from villages to school, how will they be affected? So we have all of these concerns that we have that have to be addressed as we move forward, because again, as we don't know when we will be able to reopen. So those discussions will continue. But I want to say to our teachers, again, I must say thank you so much. And I want to remind them, to take some time right now for yourself, because it's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And so we know that that you have to have some sort of peace going on. So take some time after you've done your work for the day. Take some time to relax your mind, to calm yourself down, and continue to be prepared and ready to have back your students, because a lot of them have been saying to us, Madam President, I miss my children, I miss my babies. So I know, that
I've
can
seen quite a
them.
few teachers saying that.
Yeah.
Yes, they really want to get back to school. Some of them are saying, we don't want to hear about August or September. We want to hear about, no, let's go back in June, and let's do June and July. So they are very eager to go back with their students. And so I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah.
So I want to say to them, continue to be safe. The union is here for you to reach out to us, send your questions, send your concerns. Teachers, if you have any concerns, call those numbers that we shared with you. Get in touch with Dr. Bob with the ministry, and share parents as well. And continue to be safe. Don't go out if you don't have to. And parents, please, I want to plead with our parents. Please keep your children at home. Don't have them running around, and have them engaged for some time during the day in some sort of educational activities.
All right.
Senator, thank you so much
Thank you.
for sharing with us what's happening on the union end. And we do appreciate you joining us this morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and you all continue to be safe as well.
Thank
All
you.
right.
All right, there you have it.
Yeah.
Very much an interesting situation as we try to figure out the way forward. I'm hearing a lot of similarities in terms of what the Ministry of Education is saying, and also the union, especially in kind of having a collective thought in what's best for the children right now. We're not in normal times, and so that has to be the main consideration. I think, for example, of teachers who are at home, who are also parents, who have to teach their kids, teach their own kids, and still, we all know working from home still comes with additional responsibilities, the cooking, the cleaning, and everything else. So it is a lot, and I think that the idea of moving forward, focusing on just what's necessary, and what's most helpful to the children is perhaps one of the best indicators.
The necessities is what we need to take away from this, and most importantly, that you mentioned, we need to do this collectively.